When the first heavy snows blanketed the battlefields of the Eastern Front, the war changed from a fight between armies to a contest against nature itself. Soldiers faced temperatures that plunged below -40, snow that buried weapons, and winds that could freeze skin in minutes. While the battles between Germany and the Soviet Union are remembered for their scale and brutality, few remember the quiet war fought for warmth. A survival struggle that forced both sides to invent gear and techniques that turned snow from a threat into an ally. The winter kit of the Eastern Front infantryman, born from desperation and ingenuity, became one of the most effective field systems ever devised for survival in extreme cold. The battlefield forced both armies to become masters of cold survival. By the winter of 1941, German soldiers who had marched deep into Soviet territory found themselves ill-prepared for a level of cold they had never imagined. Wool uniforms and leather boots, perfect for the forests of Europe, stiffened into frozen armour in the Russian steppe. Soviet soldiers, on the other hand, drew on generations of experience with subzero warfare. They knew that warmth came not from luxury, but from layers, grease, and insulation, principles refined through Siberian winters long before the war began. As German casualties from frostbite soared, both armies began studying each other's gear. The result was a strange hybrid kit, blending German engineering with Russian practicality. By 1943, frontline soldiers were equipped not just with weapons, but with an improvised science of survival. Grease-soaked felt boots, wax snow cloths, and field stoves fueled by animal fat and candle remnants. These innovations kept thousands alive when machinery failed, fuel froze, and the snow became their only shelter. Grease-soaked felt boots were the foundation of life in frozen trenches. The single most important item in the winter kit was the footgear. Soviet troops wore valenki, boots made from compressed sheep's wool, thick enough to trap body heat even in damp snow. On their own, they offered warmth but little protection from melting slush. To fix that, soldiers coated them with a mixture of tallow and linseed oil, rubbing it deep into the fibres until the felt became nearly waterproof. This method, known as greasing, transformed porous wool into a natural thermal barrier that could keep feet warm even when buried in snow for hours. German troops, desperate to copy this success, began greasing their own leather boots with whatever they had. Lard, axle, grease, or animal fat from field kitchens. The process was crude but effective. The layer of fat filled the pores of the leather, preventing moisture from soaking in and stopping the boots from freezing solid overnight. In field manuals recovered from the front, soldiers were instructed to warm their boots by the fire, melt a lump of grease into the leather, and let it cure overnight. The next day, the boots were flexible and water-resistant, often lasting longer than untreated pairs. For modern outdoorsmen, this technique still works. Rubbing animal fat, beeswax, or even petroleum jelly into leather or wool footwear forms a natural breathable seal that outperforms many synthetic waterproofing products. It's a direct survival lesson carried from frozen battlefields to today's winter camps. Waxed snow cloths and grease-treated covers replaced tents in a world of white. Tents were rare luxuries on the Eastern Front. Mobility was everything, and soldiers needed fast, flexible shelter they could carry on their backs. To survive, both armies turned to what became known as the snow cloth, large wax sheets that could serve as ground cover, shelter flap, or snow wall lining. These cloths were treated with wax, oil, or animal fat to repel water and resist tearing. German soldiers used them to cover dugouts and line foxholes, creating a layer that stopped melting snow from dripping inside. Soviet troops used similar sheets to wrap themselves like sleeping bags, trapping body heat while keeping frost out. Some versions were coated with paraffin and birch tar, creating a smoky scent that also kept insects away during the thawing season. The method of making one was simple enough to replicate even today. A layer of heavy cloth or canvas is brushed with melted beeswax and a small amount of linseed oil, then hung to dry. When folded, it becomes flexible yet waterproof. The Soviet army often doubled these sheets as camouflage cloaks, their dull, waxed finish blending seamlessly with snow-covered terrain. Even now, reenactors and cold-weather survivalists recreate these wax cloths for bushcraft use. They act as both tarp and poncho, proving that a wartime improvisation remains one of the most efficient multi-purpose shelter systems ever designed. Fat-fueled stoves turned rations into warmth and survival. Perhaps the most underrated invention of the Eastern Front winter kit was the small fat-fueled field stove. Soldiers on both sides quickly discovered that gasoline stoves failed in extreme cold. The fuel thickened, valves froze, and metal warped. Instead, they turned to a simpler and far more reliable method: burning rendered animal fat or candle wax. Soviet troops carried small tin containers that could burn animal fat soaked into cloth wicks. A spoonful of fat could keep a flame alive for an hour, enough to thaw water or heat a can of soup. German engineers later refined the design into folding metal stoves that held a small dish of solid grease or wax. When lit, these produced a slow, steady flame that could be shielded from the wind. The principle was efficient chemistry. Fat burns hot, slow, and consistently, and it doesn't freeze like liquid fuel. Soldiers scavenged kitchen scraps, boiled down bones, or collected leftover bacon grease from mess tents to keep their stoves burning. This method is still viable for modern survival. Melted tallow or candle wax in a tin can produces reliable flameless heat that works even below zero. These stoves weren't just for cooking. Soldiers used them to dry socks, thaw gun oil, and prevent frostbite on hands. Combined with the insulated felt boots and wax cloth shelters, they completed a system that let men endure conditions colder than the Arctic, often without fires visible to the enemy. What made the Eastern Front winter gear remarkable was not its sophistication, but its efficiency. It used simple natural materials, wool, fat, wax and felt, refined through necessity into a complete survival system. Each piece had multiple uses, each principle was rooted in field experience, and together they formed a doctrine that treated cold as a force to be managed, not feared. For historians and survival enthusiasts, these lessons remain invaluable. The grease-soaked boot prevents frostbite better than any synthetic liner. The wax snow cloth can outlast modern tarps. The fat-fueled stove is a masterclass in low-tech reliability. Every part of this kit teaches the same truth. Survival comes not from abundance, but from understanding the materials at hand. To explore more forgotten fieldcraft, lost wartime technologies, and the resilience that defined history's toughest soldiers, subscribe to Echoes of Valor and share this video with others who value real, tested survival knowledge. The lessons from the Eastern Front aren't just history. They're blueprints for endurance in the harshest conditions ever faced by man.